What is the most exciting finding that you've seen emerging?
And these things have been starting to emerge for some years now, but I think they're really converging that dynamically.
The big paradigm shift is designing for the non-conscious pre-attentive experience, acknowledging your instincts are there, and understanding tabula rasa, the idea the mind's a blank slate. That's false, guys.
When we're not even consciously aware of what's going on in an environment, it has a profound effect upon us anyway. And that is so important to understand that, especially as practitioners.
It's an issue of public health in the end.
This has been wonderful. What an amazing group of people and amazing topics.
Well, welcome. Welcome all. We're so excited to have you. I know more people will be joining us in this hour. This is just such a thrill to be launching the Handbook. It's a book that compiles 31 chapters by 50 authors on 4 continents and 14 countries, showcasing how new 21st century understanding in neuroscience and psychology and biology are transformative for other disciplines, including architecture, planning, and other design fields. And it's the first book put out by the HAPI, the Human Architecture and Planning Institute. We're a nonprofit heading into our 6th year, and our mission is to improve the design of the built environment through education and research. So the book really reflects our game-changing time, showcasing science that wasn't available for me to even think about when I went to architecture school in the 1990s. And a big pivot is how your body, your non-conscious experiencing is directing us. And I'll let our PhD neuroscientist on our board, on the HAPI board, the Alexandros Lavdas, take it from here.
Thank you, Anne. Welcome, everybody, from me too. Just building on what Anne said, I have to note that this is a cross-disciplinary study field that barely existed up until a few years ago. And of course, the topic is interesting from the point of neuroscience as a research topic, how we interact with the environment, but also it has very obvious practical applications for the way that we form our artificial and built environment. And we now know that the environment is never neutral, but it affects us on both a physiological and a psychological level. And this book connects basically architecture with neuroscience, with cognitive science, physiology, behavioral psychology, and newly available AI-based measurement tools. And I want to say that it really sheds new light on truths that were obvious until recently, until like 100 years ago, but have been forgotten, at least in the construction field, in architecture and design. So we're trying to sort of remind people of what they always knew and forgot, but remind them with new tools, new scientific tools. And we hope that this book empowers designers, researchers, and students to collaborate across disciplines, because I do believe that a new era of holism is coming, which is informed by actual data and not sort of nebulous as it used to be sometimes in the past. So thank you very much again for being here for this launch. And
Thank you, Anne and Alexandros. And it's a wonderful book. I'm going to make just a few sort of brief comments on this remarkable book, and then I'm going to turn it over to some of the contributors and ask them to introduce themselves and describe their contributions. So I'm not a contributor and I'm not a neuroscientist. I come at this from an outsider's perspective as a practitioner within the design professions and an observer of the historic changes really we've seen over the years. Anne alluded to that and Alexandros did. And I do think this book represents a historic inflection point. That old overused phrase paradigm shift might actually be the right one here. The great urban journalist Jane Jacobs wrote in Death and Life of Great American Cities, some of you may remember, the chapter on visual order at the end of the book. A little notice, but very important, I think. Essentially, what she pointed out was that we in the architecture and design professions had screwed up, essentially, the relationship between art and life. And instead of using art to support and enrich the life of the city and its people, we were imposing our own abstract expressionism that was intruding upon and suppressing the life of the city, she said. And this relationship, she said, was bad for cities and probably bad for art too. In her withering way, she said, it's neither art nor life, but taxidermy. Now, that was over 60 years ago, and unfortunately, not enough has changed. But I think something now has changed, and that's what we're talking about here, that what this book is representing. We're now beginning to accumulate very solid and helpful research findings about the impacts of our designs on personal and planetary health, and the ways we need to reshape our designs, improve our work, really transform our work in profound new opportunities and modes. So let me spell out a few of those. First of all, I think these findings reveal to us the actual needs of our users, not only their self-identified preferences, which are certainly important, but also the often hidden ways that our designs actually impact their daily experience and quality of life, and can afford them a healthier and more ecological life, or conversely damage that. Secondly, these findings remind us that there is already a lot of embodied intelligence in the patterns and practices of the past and in the structures of the natural world. It's getting uncovered by this work. The unquestioned obsession with novelty and artistic expression has been very damaging to our ability to tap into this collective intelligence, and the research is beginning to show that. And too often, this has been a program of packaging and branding of toxic industrial products with the allure of fine art and great universities. And the findings in this book show that this is an untenable condition. We have to move back to the human being and to their world primarily. And third, I think these findings point to specific tools and strategies, as Alexandros said, that we can apply in our work and raise it to another level of environmental quality and quality of life. But they show us how to make new combinations of specific local adaptations and innovations, along with the timeless patterns of history and nature. And fourth, I think this work reminds us of our profound responsibility to all those who will dwell in and use our buildings and environments and the biosphere of which we are all a part. We have a duty of care, not unlike medical professionals, that we haven't always met. And speaking of medical professionals, we can think of our relationship to this work in a similar way, I think. The medical professionals aren't doing the research, the practitioners aren't, but they're staying abreast of the findings and studying those lessons, applying those in their practice to improve the lives of their patients. And I think that's what we need to do as well. And like medical professionals, we should follow the dictum of first do no harm, right? Our work as sculptural art may be wonderful and clever, and we may pat ourselves on the back, but it's only experienced consciously in short intervals, whereas its impact on daily experience and well-being is continuous and profound, and that's what the research is showing us. So we need to ask ourselves, does our work cause disorientation or confusion or stress? Or does it clarify and enrich the life and experience of a place? How does it enrich the life of those who live in and around it and expand their ability to enjoy that place and their quality of life? And I think with the insights and tools of this book, we can do a vastly better job of answering those questions. To be clear, this responsibility does not constrain the scope of creative expression for built environment professionals, which I think is a fallacy, by the way. On the contrary, it expands and it deepens it, I think. As I said in the introduction, our art is and must be enmeshed with human life and its patterns so that both are enriched. There's a wonderful quote from Henry David Thoreau that I think we have to follow here. The greatest art is to shape the quality of the day. And that's what I think we can do with the help of this great book. So now I'd like to turn it over to the authors, and we'll let each of you introduce yourselves briefly and describe your chapter. And we'll start with the first section of the book, Embracing Human Evolution and Biology in Architecture, and Vasiliki Melitaki. Vasiliki?
Hi, everyone. I hope you can still hear me. I'm Vasiliki Miletaki. I'm a researcher at Penn Center for Neuroaesthetics, working with Professor Ansan Chatterjee. It's our pleasure to be here today. I represent both of us, and to have a contribution in the book. In our chapter, the first one in the book, we talk about architectural aesthetics, and we have a focus on health and well-being. We talk about some of the research that our lab and other labs have been doing on neuroaesthetics of architecture and neuroarchitecture. We talk about the aesthetic triad, a model of cognition that we have developed in the lab about the three different brain networks that shape aesthetic experience that you see here on the left: knowledge, meaning, emotion, evaluation, and sensory motor brain networks. And we also talk about coherence, association, and hominess that we see consistently in our research as the main components that define, that shape the aesthetic appreciation of space for participants from different fields. And then we provide an overview of the research that we have available for specifically design in healthcare spaces. Thank you. If you want to know more, you can read the chapter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Alexandros. Alexandros, please give a little more detail about your chapter, if you would.
So, yeah, as you probably know, I'm a neuroscientist. My connection to the field probably goes back to the time I was a student, and one of my professors was Semir Zeki, the founder of neuroaesthetics. But I think what really turned me to this direction was my acquaintance with Nikos Dixalingaros, who is also a contributor and who everybody knows. So the chapter is about neuroaesthetics and evolution, and it's discussing how evolution shaped the way that we sense the environment, how we connect with the environment, and it gives some examples. This is an example from our experimental work. Eye tracking of different buildings is always the case that higher density of eye tracking maps coincides with structures that are preferable in surveys of preference. And if we can go to the next slide, please. If you're wondering what Raquel Welch and the snake are doing in this chapter, well, I can tell you this, that this is a discussion about sexual selection and natural selection. And why some people are universally thought of as pretty does have to do with sexual selection, despite the fact that, you know, even when she was alive, for most people, there was zero chance of procreating with her. And the same goes for women and people who are gay and whatever. They would say she is a pretty woman. And also, everybody's afraid of a snake, although they're highly unlikely to encounter a snake. There are aesthetic and subconscious even reactions to sets of visual stimuli that have filtered through evolution and have shaped our aesthetics. For the snake, I have to say very, very quickly that there is actually dedicated circuit from the thalamus to the amygdala that notifies mammals, and especially primates, of the presence of a snake. And that, I think, gives a very good indication of how much we're shaped by our past, our evolutionary past. And I will stop here because I think my time is finished.
And thank you, Alexandros. And A. Vernon Woodworth, that's done chapter 3.
Thank you very much. And thank you for showing this slide, which pretty much defines the content of the chapter that I wrote for the first part of this book. And this is an attempt to illustrate various nested systems on a range or scale from toxic to healthy. I could go into detail, but I think the bottom line that I'm trying to express here is that regardless of whatever system you're describing, it can fall somewhere on this spectrum, on this scale. And the illustration is also intended to emphasize the relationship between different systems. So in other words, you can have a system based on environmental interactions, and systems are primarily described in terms of energy transfer. But the environment is related to other systems, such as the management of the economy, or it also influences psychological status. So the article goes into more detail, but I'll skip over the particulars just to emphasize that by focusing on systems, we can have a model for understanding homeostasis, regulation, stress, and energy transfer. And the topic, or the chapter title, is The Quality of Relationships and Agency as Environmental Variables. When I talk about the quality of relationships, I am specifically referring to the mammalian characteristic of nursing as both a nutritive and psychological or emotional energy transfer. And that brings me to the conclusion that the quality of relationship and including the relationship to the environment is based on whether or not it's nourishing. And that term does pop up at various points in the handbook, describing the goal of a healthy environmental context. I'm just placing it here in a systems perspective. I've spent a fair amount of time in this chapter on the developmental characteristics of human biology and psychology. And I have a quote that I'd like to read. "The roots of resilience are to be found in the sense of being understood by and existing in the heart and mind of a loving, attuned, and self-possessed other." This is a chapter or a quote from Diana Fascia in Bessel van der Kolk's book on the body keeps the score. And it informs not just personal well-being, but I think also social well-being. That if you have relationships based on this level of connection, you are going to be on the healthier end of these spectrums shown in the stress scale. And my basic point is that humans evolved to create these relationships far beyond other mammals, and largely through the use of prosody or tone of voice, facial expression. Mirror neurons are a huge part of this, or at least some people believe so. And I conclude that portion with an analogy to the process in construction called commissioning, which
I hate to interrupt, but we've got so short on time for everybody, and I'm sorry everybody has such a short interval. I want to leave some time for everybody to talk. Do you have a quick summation, Vernon, you'd like to give?
Okay, so I think I was asked to describe both chapters that I wrote. Hopefully that'll buy me a little extra time.
I think we have you again. Is that right? Oh, no, you're going to do 31 also. Go ahead.
Okay, so essentially, the point that I'm trying to make here is that the health of a system depends on its management of allostatic load and its ability to respond to and resolve stress. If our environmental context assists with that, it's healthy. If it doesn't, if it contributes to stress, obviously it's not. And the relationship of living systems has to be included in our understanding of that dynamic. So very briefly, regarding the final chapter, I rely heavily on Johanni Palasma's work. He uses the phrase forceful emotional engagement and describes life-enhancing architecture and unconscious peripheral perception experienced outside the sphere of focused vision, and relates these concepts to Ian McGilchrist's work on left versus right lateralization and Merlin Donald's description of the origins of the modern mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to a good friend, Nir Burras, who wrote chapter 4. Nir?
Thank you very, very much. I want to thank Anne and Vernon and Alexandros for including me in this really extraordinary book. Our work really, and our work is Anami Pandit Haji, who's not here today, and my own, really based on the work that we'd previously done in the classic planning fractal roundtable together with Richard Taylor, Anna Brielman, Nikos Salingaros, Alexandros Lavdas, and Branka Spear, where we sequenced what happens in your brain when you walk down the street. And I think that we did a pretty good, created a pretty good model of aesthetic experience that from which we started asking more questions. Among them, what about cars? What's going on there? And at some point, this this idea of the movement, that the way we perceive movement seems to be very, very different from how we perceive the stable environment, and starting to compare responses to animals with responses to cars, we discovered that, first of all, anything that moves in the built environment has legs on it, like furniture. And if a building is moving, you're in really big trouble. That led to the question of, well, what's all this business with wheels? And are wheels in any way actually comparable, analogous to legs in some strange way? So I think we, in our exploration, we looked more at asking the questions that might be there and require further research to actually confirm some of our hypotheses. You can see here the idea that an exposed wheel is more threatening than a covered wheel makes the Citroën DS maybe the most urbane car ever designed. But we have some really interesting questions that came out of this, and the separation in perception between stable environment and moving environment. I think that's the big takeaway from here. This might actually bring us to reestablish what motor vehicle codes might be like, and what street design might be like, and what the place of cars really is in reducing stress in streets. And you can see in the top right of the photograph, the presence of cars makes that corner maybe appearing more stressful than what is directly behind the Citroën. So thank you very, very much. It's been an honor to be included in this. And the work continues. Thank you.
Yeah. And then turning it over to Don Ruggles, good friend Don Ruggles.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie. Dawn is out sick today, unfortunately. But Dawn and I co-authored this chapter. And it is called Harmony in Design, Leveraging Human Biology for Aesthetic Well-Being. And so we just kind of talked about how the built environment influences human health through its direct interaction with our biology. So we talk about the sensory and nervous systems. We highlight that the brain is continually processing visual, auditory, tactile, and olfactory information, even at a subconscious level, and how these inputs actually shape physiological responses through the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of the autonomic nervous system. And it affects whether the body maintains balance or if our bodies shift towards stress. So in our chapter, we do touch a bit on the modern environments and how these can often overwhelm this adaptive capacity that we as humans have, which contributes to chronic stress and allostatic load. And how supportive environments, on the other hand, can actually help regulate arousal and ease this burden. And so we introduced the term by design, which only focuses on a few principles that have longstanding evolutionary, that are aligned with our longstanding evolutionary preferences. We highlight 4 of them, which are because they're strongly supported in research. We talk about bilateral symmetry, biophilia, biomorphic design, and of course, patterns and fractals, which go hand in hand with biophilia and biomorphic design. And so together, these principles do demonstrate that beauty is indeed biologically meaningful. Environments that are coherent, well organized, and connected to nature can help support homeostasis, reduce stress hormones, and positively influence our emotional well-being. And so Dawn and I conclude our chapter by talking about salutogenic design, and so how we can actually use aesthetics, neuroscience, and environmental psychology to not only create spaces that don't harm humans, but actively promote health. So if there's one thing I think to take away from our chapter, it's that we believe that design and biology are inseparable, and that the spaces we inhabit shape our nervous systems every moment that we are within them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Anne. And Abigail, I don't know if she's on the call also. Chapter 6.
This is great. Abigail, you're here, right?
Hello, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'll just introduce it and I'll hand it off to Abigail. This is something I stole from a Harvard Business School article. Attention is currency. Who knew? Well, the advertising world, the business world knows that where you look first really, really matters, because that influences what you're going to do. And here we've used the 3M BAST software that's a now plugin for Photoshop, which tells in the first 3 to 5 seconds where people will look unconsciously, pre-attentively. And you can see the Raisin Bran box. There is nothing arbitrary about the design at all. It's non-consciously designed to snare you, because as a social primate, we immediately look where eyes are looking and where a smiling face is looking. And we're going to see, you see in the visual sequence diagram on the left here, they're going to look at the face instantly, then likely the Raisin Bran logo, then the heart, and then the cereal, and you will buy the box and bring it home because you're lonely. Anyway, I'll stop talking. Next, Abigail.
Sure. So it's really great to be in this virtual space with all of you. I'm really excited to share this book with everybody. I just want to touch on some points that a lot of folks have mentioned so far, which is the correlation between environment and health. The World Health Organization literally calls out the physical environment as a health determinant, just as much as social environment or economic environment. So what Anne and I wanted to explore in this chapter was using that same framework that has been long employed in business schools and advertising companies to understand how human beings interact with products, and apply that to the built environment, because our visual system is the same as human beings across evolution, whether we are looking at our parent or our partner or a building or a car. So if we are able to use these tools applied to the architectural experience, we can deduce what works, what doesn't work, and quite simply prove with quantifiable data solutions that may aid to a better, healthier, more equitable world all around us. So we use the tools like iMotions, which Alexandros mentioned earlier, which is live data collection. And we also used 3M visual attention software, which is an AI trained by vision scientists, and it is advertised as 92% as accurate as live data tracking. So you can correlate very quickly between 3M VAS, which is generated in about 30 seconds, versus an iMotion study, which takes much longer because you're using real people. But they're very simple tools that are accessible and can sort of shift the conversation about design for health.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you guys. So over to Richard Taylor and Anastasia Leshak. I don't know if she's with us.
She is. So yeah, I'm Richard Taylor. So thank you for inviting me. It's always fun to see good old friends and to make some new ones. And I've been enjoying seeing how everything is intertwined in the book, and we enjoyed it immensely. So I'm a scientist, and it's been a real privilege to collaborate with Martin and Anna, who run a company called 13 and 9 in Austria, and Martin runs an architecture company called InnoCAD. So very briefly, we're very interested in the modern version of biophilia, because biophilia declares that we've got an innate connection with nature. And our chapter is about something called fractal fluency, the idea that all of these fractal patterns in nature that we've been surrounded by for millions of years, we've become fluent in that visual language. And so in our chapter, we talk about all of the health benefits associated with that. When you look at a fractal, it kind of moves you into a visual comfort zone, and you get reduced stress levels by up to 60%. the beauty of working with Martin and Anna is that we've been able to take all of this science and bring it into reality. This pattern, you can see these patterns that we're showing here are all in buildings around the world. And what I want to say particularly is that last week, Martin and Anna were in Miami at the World Architecture Festival, and they won the World Interior of the Year prize, which is absolutely incredible. So Martin and Anna are here. And so Martin and Anna, I don't know if you want to add something extra.
Hello, everyone. Very lovely to meet you. Greetings from Austria. It's a huge pleasure to be included in this wonderful book. Thank you, Richard, for your lovely introduction. Our work relates to content that Richard explained. We have implemented fractal patterns in many of our projects, from product application up to space, interior space and exterior architecture. So if you are interested into topic how to work with fractals, we will be very happy to talk to you further, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. So turning it over to Roz Kavanagh, chapter 10.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say how honored and humbled I am to be amongst this group of people. My studies in color have been self-motivated because as a designer, I found that there was so little good information on color. And as I dove more deeply into color, I discovered how so much of our color training is on the basis of an artist and guided by really fine arts faculties, and a flat surface is very different to an environment surfaces that we live in. And so I am trying to distill all the information that I've put together through the years in trying to teach color and talk about color. It was hard to get it into one chapter, and I have to thank Alexandros for being so patient and guiding me to be more scientific in how I discovered it, how I talked about color constancy, because again, part of the problem with color is sort of building that bridge between creatives and scientists. We need both. And it's hard to sometimes bring us together because we speak very different languages. And so this book, this chapter, I mean, really tried hard to cover a lot of little topics, but also bring the emotional part of color into the discussion, because what I've learned as a designer over the years and working with clients is that it's so important to understand the client and their needs. And we really have to be cognizant of that and that intuition. And so much of the scientific research that's gone into color, because scientists were not aware that red is not necessarily red. When we talk about red, for instance, last night when we were watching the Buffalo Bills and the Texans play, my husband said, wow, I don't think Buffalo can beat the Texans. And I realized their red costumes, their red uniforms are so intimidating that whoever picked their uniform colors must have been a color person, because they understood picking the right red was so important. And that is very important for our environments and understanding how we pick colors. And to try and explain all this in 2 minutes is hard, but I hope you enjoy the book, and I am certainly honored to be part of this. Thank you so much, and Alexandros. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Roz. Alexander Adams, as chapter 13. And this is part 3, human social behavior and need for connection with others and ourselves. And sorry to rush you all, but we do want to have a little bit of time for discussion. We don't want anybody to be caught.
Here we go.
So please.
Sorry, I was
can.
finding the unmute. Yes, thank you. I would like to think that I was given chapter 13 because I'm the odd man here. I'm a planner, an urban designer, preservationist, environmentalist that works at the scale of the city, so not individual projects. I've worked in local governments and private practice, not-for-profits. And I was asked to talk about how the topics in this book, how all of you and the great work you've done could be implemented out into the city. And so Lincoln once said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. You know, that's the political environment we're in now. But I would say that people are in need of this. They're not in need of mental health. They're in need of human health. They're in need of welfare and quality of life. So I'm here to talk about how we can use this, what I would say a great scientific work of art, merging the art and science. We are all designers and we must bring the fields, architecture, planning, psychology, health, public administration, and landscape architecture, and others all to the table like this book has done. The question of implementation is how do we engage the people where they live? A lot of people have talked about that. The practitioner, the generalist, and the apprentice has kind of been forgotten in the 21st century with the endless look for specialization. And so there's great peace in just being. You know, that's why everybody wants to have yoga and so forth. We're human beings, and we forget that the being part, we're not robots or engineered data. So as author of chapter 13, I'm honored to bring everything together, and hopefully the way we're bringing collaborations and coalitions together in this book, we can go out and do in our cities. And I pose a couple questions. One is, how many times has someone seen in a comprehensive plan, we do a lot of comprehensive planning, the goal of fun? You know, for some reason we put all these goals in the comprehensive plan, but should we just have the goal of fun? Should we just have it that people are there and that we are all beings together? And we here are less than 0.1% of people that know these subjects. So now it's really our job to put it out into the world and implement it as wide as possible with as many groups as possible. And that's exactly what I think I tried to bring with some ideas on how to implement that broadly.
Thank you, Alex. That's great. Kara Armstrong, chapter 16 of the same section.
Hello, everybody. My chapter is called Drawing from Within, Immersive Sketching as Neuroscientific Inquiry. And I'm exploring how drawing done slowly and on site can become a cognitive and emotional bridge between ourselves and the spaces we live in and inhabit. So when we draw immersively, we're not just recording a scene, we're engaging our brain's deeper systems, and our hippocampus begins mapping light, texture, and spatial relationships, while multi-sensory cues like light and sound and scent create what neuroscientists calls rich encoding. I just love that phrase too, rich encoding, forming vivid and lasting spatial memories. And I got to explore this through drawing at 3 Cape Cod modern houses. At the Kohlberg House, the fluid boundary between indoors and outdoors supports our spatial mapping. At the Hall House, which is the second, thank you, Anne, shifting light and shadow really anchor emotion and enhances cognitive clarity. And in the Lecce House and Studio, I came to understand how tactile materials activate affective networks and create a sense of grounding and calm. And across these spaces, drawing becomes really a mindfulness practice. It slows perceptions, quiets the limbic system, and it fosters resilience through focused attention. And ultimately, my chapter argues that immersive drawing is not only an artistic method, but a neuroscientific one. And it's a way to understand how architecture shapes our memory, our emotions, and the lived experience of place. And I want to congratulate and thank Happy for launching this book, creating this book. It's a delight to be part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. Julio, now we're going to go to part 4, Going Beyond Ourselves, Experiencing the Sacred, and Julio Bermudez, chapter 18.
Thank you for inviting me. Very quickly, sacred architecture arguably is the architecture, the buildings that produce the most qualitative experience of all. And of course, through the centuries, we have had plenty of theories. And now we are at a time where we can prove or disprove some of these things, and maybe learn more, as we heard at the beginning of this session. In any case, we are using what we call neurophenomenology. Well, we don't call it, it's pretty established in the field, which is the capacity of connecting subjective experience and neurophysiological activity that can be measured, of course. So it's second, it's a third and first person perspective on reality that are connected. We conducted a concrete experiment that you could see here in the slide. We sent 32 committed Catholics to experience 2 different architectural conditions. One was a Catholic church, the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, and the other one was the Union Station, which is a train station in Washington, D.C. And we sent them with a very clear protocol and a very clear definition of the path, and measuring their brain through mobile EEG and their physiology through biometrics, and conducted also questions about their psychological or cognitive states. So basically what we found is that the sacred space reduced anxiety, reduced mind wandering, enhanced connectivity to others and to their faith, and maybe more important, since all that could have been predicted anyway, that we measure increased difference in the gamma band at the train station, suggesting high level of cognitive activity, reduce activity of the brain in the sense of the default mode network, which correlates with mind wandering, and high activation of the parietal lobe, along with high levels of heart rate in terms of emotional activity, and yet lower blood pressure, which is an apparently contradiction, but actually it has been proven that those 2 things could happen at the same time, suggesting some sense of awe and respect for what we've been experienced. In other words, I think this is important because, again, as I said before, there is a lot of conversations on this, how architecture affects us, and I think for first time we can begin to measure in reality whether that's true or not. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So now switching to neurodiversity, stress, trauma, and healing, and Evan Calabrese, whichever, I'm not sure what you prefer, but chapter 20.
Hi, everyone. I am Yvonne Calabrese. I'm a healthcare designer and design researcher with NBBJ in Portland, and the author of the chapter, Neurodiversity in Architecture, How Neurodivergent Architects Shaped Our World and How We're Shaping Our World for Neurodiversity. And I also happen to be neurodivergent. My chapter starts by zooming out. Neurodivergence is an umbrella term that describes the way many of our brains work differently from what we call neurotypical. This includes autism and ADHD, as well as PTSD, brain injury, and other forms of trauma. These differences shape how we process sensory input, perceive patterns, and experience space, which directly relates them to architecture. Walter Gropius's house.
There we go. We lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You have me back? All right. On the screen, you're seeing one of my favorite pairings. This is Walter Gropius's house in Massachusetts next to a World War I bunker. And I explore how modern architecture was shaped in part by neurodivergent architects themselves. Let me lose my voice a little bit. So Gropius, Mies van der Rohe, and Le Corbusier, whose trauma, war experiences, and autism likely influenced their preferences for facades, form, and planning logic. So the first half asks, what happens when a small number of atypical brains get to decide what good architecture looks like for everyone else? And then from there, the chapter shifts to how do we move from architecture shaped by a few neurodivergent minds to architecture that supports the full spectrum of neurodiversity. Within this, I compare several frameworks, including biophilic design, trauma-informed design, the Autism Aspects Index, the Veterans Mental Health Guideline, the housing design for people recovering from homelessness. And through these, I found some shared patterns, including predictability, choice, refuge, connection to nature, and clear wayfinding. I also then looked at some NBVJ projects that put this into practice. So here you see a Veterans Medical Center in New Orleans, a youth behavioral health campus in California, and a school for students with learning differences. I also looked at eye tracking, which you actually saw on the previous slide, biometrics, and post-occupancy evaluation. So the main takeaway from this is nothing about us without us. Neuroarchitecture can't rely on a single master architect vision anymore. It must be co-created with the people whose nervous system will inhabit these spaces every day. And I'm thrilled to share this work with you all, for you to dive into this chapter, and excited to keep exploring alongside this community how neuroscience can shape the future of design in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Sorry, I said Evan. Yvonne.
Problem.
And now we'll switch to the final chapter, final section, Building a Future for Human Health and Well-Being. And we'll go to Vernon Lim, chapter 24.
I believe, is he here? I think he's in an airport in Singapore. We'll have to move on to the next one.
Okay, well, we'll go, if maybe we can come back, but chapter 25, and I know, Abigail, you were part of that chapter, Gideon Spanjar, Frank Sernbrook, Justin Hollander, Zara Alanam, and Regine Stolp. One of you, I think, is going to...
Yes, it's going to be me. Thank you very much to be part of this wonderful publication and the other editors. This is not a slide I actually sent, but not... Yeah, this one. Thank you. So yes, we worked on this chapter with a bunch of researchers from Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, Tufts University, and the Happy Institute. And our chapter is entitled "The Value of Pocket Parks in the 21st Century." It's really a hot topic in the process of densifying our cities. How can we actually create spaces that promote well-being, and as you can see here with the high line on elevating those spaces are also becoming smaller. So what's actually the impact? And this is part of a larger project, Building for Well-Being, where we look at these kind of challenges with our partners, spatial designers. It's all consortium. Next slide, please. So we use all kind of biometric technology. It was already mentioned by others, trying to get a better understanding the impact of those pocket parks. If you look at visual attention, human well-being. And we looked at a whole topology of pocket parks in the Netherlands and also in the US, especially in New York and Boston. Try to get a better understanding how those biometric tools can be applied, such as visual attention software, which you see on the top right. It's AI-based for predicting attention, and we actually compared it to our own eye tracking results and to see in what kind of circumstances how accurate and how effective it could be, because it offers a lot of potential for urban designers. If you want to hear about results, you have to read our chapter. And if you want to hear more about our project Building for Wellbeing, go to buildingforwellbeing.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So chapter 28, Tulay Caracas, that'll be we'll try to go by them if he's available. Go ahead.
I'm here and available. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's such a delight to be here with all of you at this significant event first. My name is Tulay Caracas, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture at Istanbul Technical University. I collaborated on this chapter with my former supervisor, Dilek Yıldız Özkan. She's not available today. an associate professor in the same department at the same university. I will be delivering this speech on behalf of both of us. I want to start with the context of this research, which represents the unseen aspects, actually. This research is especially meaningful to me as part of my PhD dissertation, A Journey of Learning and Growth. My thesis comprised 3 published research papers as its core, and this book chapter is its final component, an architecture research framework for the neuroscience of human experience. It has been refined and expanded for the book. Although this is an introductory text for a distinguished audience, including undergraduates, graduates, experts who wish to be part of this multidisciplinary community, it is designed to be simplified, organized, structured, and systematic. And I believe that simplifying complex concepts is definitely more challenging than merely laying out the findings. In this research, we synthesized accumulated knowledge from various studies over the years into a new form to benefit future researchers. We posed one main question, actually: how can architects utilize knowledge of the brain function for their research and design activities? And this question led us to more questions and the need to develop an architecture research framework, as indicated by the title. The neuroscience of human experience encompasses various components, which are categories, dimensions, levels of human experience, and creating a research spectrum for a wide range of conditions and variables, which are experiential, environmental, and associated neuroscience phenomena. And most importantly, this framework integrates theory, methodology, and practice. In this chapter, readers will find ways to initiate, design, and conduct research, as well as an exploration of quality of the acquired knowledge and its relevance to practice and anticipation trends in the field. The field continues to grow exponentially, and the established framework encourages future studies, actually. It offers structured guidance for upcoming researchers and facilitates a comprehensive understanding of the field. In closing, I can genuinely say that our work is just the beginning of a never-ending exploration, let's say. As we witness rapid advancements across disciplines, the landscape of the research remains dynamic and ever-evolving. And we know that it's essential to stay dedicated and organized to keep pace with the vibrant field. I think this is the biggest takeaway from here. And thank you for all of you for your time and attention. And please enjoy reading the book and the chapter. Thank you.
We have time for just a couple of quick questions. I'll start with a question for Anne and Alexandros. What are the plans for the book? I think you're talking about maybe a paperback edition. Is that right?
Well, what happens is Routledge decides that. I think it's 12 to 16 months after the hardcover and e-back, it's automatically a paperback. It will come out in 3 forms. I can ask them when, but they do the hardback and then the e-book first, and then the following year they'll release the paperback. There is some exciting news. I don't know if you know this. Green Build is the largest international green building sustainable design conference in the world. It will be at the Javits Center in New York City, Manhattan, October 2026. And Green Build and Routledge are owned by Informa. So when you walk into a Green Build conference, the first thing you can see is our book. So guys, we could be at the Javits Center in Manhattan in October, really promoting our book, and perhaps the paperback will be out by then, but that's incredible. I will talk to Routledge about this. I just was 2 weeks ago, there was the Green Build 2025, and I walked in and the first thing I saw was the Routledge desk. It's the first thing, you know, you see. And I said, hey, where's our book? And they said, oh, put it right up. So we have an incredible opportunity to do talks. They also invited me to an author speaking hour. So let's, you know, Green Build 2026 isn't quite ready yet. They're going to be announcing, but we have an incredible opportunity to present there because Green Build and Routledge are owned by the same company. It's just an incredible opportunity.
So let me ask you, Anne and Alexandros and the others, if you want to jump in just in the 5 minutes we have available. What is the most exciting finding that you've seen emerging, or set of findings in, say, the last 5 years or so? And what's the most promising that maybe needs more development?
Alexandros, do you want to take it away?
Well, I think it's not a single finding. I think it's just the convergence of different streams of information. And these things have been starting to emerge for some years now, but I think they're really converging that dynamically now. I mean, our knowledge, and Richard knows very well about that, our knowledge about the influence of fractals, how the brain perceives fractals, but also scaling, also other components of image geometry. Recent finding by Anna Franklin's lab this year that there is the same kind of preference in infants that there is in adults in geometrical features of the image. So there's a whole host of findings that converge to the same idea that, yes, that there is this geometry of nature to which we are tuned and which we are fluent in perceiving.
And the paradigm shift too is that feelings matter. I went to a conference and talked about emotions, and a guy said, "Emotions, that's girly." That's not true. Now we know feelings matter, and the business world knows that. And so the big paradigm shift is designing for the non-conscious, pre-attentive experience, acknowledging your instincts are there, and understanding tabula rasa, the idea the mind's a blank slate. That's false, guys. Yes, everything.
And it's, I should say, it's interesting that in psychology, the idea that the behaviorist approach to all of human psychology is like obsolete for some time now, but it seems that in architecture it still remains prominent. People think that we are tabula rasa and we can be conditioned into liking whatever is given to us.
You know, I was talking to another contributor who isn't with us, Cleo Valentine, and she was talking about how what we're really learning that's so impressive is that when we're not even consciously aware of what's going on in an environment, it has a profound effect upon us anyway. And that is so important to understand that, especially as practitioners, that we're having an effect on people even when they don't know it. That's a pretty startling finding and very important one, I think, as well.
It's an issue of public health in the end.
It is, yeah. Well, I use the analogy of the medical practitioners, you know, that we have a duty of care, and really we're very similar in that way to medical practitioners because we are having an impact on health. Anybody else have any final words? We have about 2 minutes to go. You get the last word.
Come on, Brandon.
What's the most exciting frontier issue that you're working on or that you're excited about? Anybody want to jump in on that? I could say, you know, a lot of what you guys are all doing individually, the eye tracking thing, the fMRI testing, the measurement of stress, and the biological assessments are really interesting, and teasing out the different factors in cognition and in experience in the way the brain processes this knowledge is really important and exciting to discover how it's going to impact our work and how we can.
Absolutely. There is a raised hand by Nushin.
No.
Go ahead. Yeah, please jump in, everybody.
I just have so much. This has been wonderful. What an amazing group of people and amazing topics. I wanted to thank Anne, first of all, for doing this, and all of you for putting this together. Something that came to mind as I was chatting with Julio previously, and now that I'm through looking at wisdom traditions and various different cultures, I think we can experience and see things differently. I can see a next edition of this book taking that path a little bit more towards understanding when we grow up or when we are in a different various cultures or traditions, how does that impact us? Alexandros, you talked about beauty and how we see beauty, but then in different cultures through various colors, various forms, all that impact us. And I think that would be something fantastic to explore. And I know, and I chatted with Julio previously, that We know there's not enough empirical evidence in that kind of area, like in awe-inspiring. Julio's probably one of the leaders in understanding how the built environment impact us emotionally, spiritually, and spiritually without any context of religion. Just that those poetic qualities, invisible qualities that Louis Kahn always talks about, that architecture needs to move us, not just shelter us. I'm really forward looking to something on this topic as well, but all of you are doing an amazing job. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
I just want
Thank you, sir.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Bye-bye.
everyone.